The clink of silverware was the only sound I could hear, until the waiter's voice cut through the air. Your total comes to $2,237. Every head at the long mahogany table turned toward me. Not toward the uncle who ordered the lobster tower. Not toward the cousin sipping his third glass of champagne. Toward me. I froze. The receipt sat in front of me like a trap. My name circled in ink. My responsibility. At the head of the table, Aunt Marjorie leaned back in her chair, lips curling into a smug smile. "Well," she said sweetly, "you're the responsible one. You wouldn't let family down." The others laughed. It was supposed to be funny. It wasn't. Heat climbed up my neck, but I stayed silent. The room felt smaller, darker, like the walls were pushing in. Marjorie raised her glass, her diamonds catching the light. She thought she had won. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this moment wasn't my downfall. It was the beginning of hers. People like Marjorie don't just appear out of nowhere. They grow roots in families, stretching themselves over every decision, every gathering, until no one remembers what life felt like without them. For me, it had always been that way. I was the dependable one, the steady one, the one who showed up on time, paid the bills, remembered birthdays, and fixed things when they broke. While others drifted through life in bursts of drama and glitter, I held the rope taut so the whole family ship didn't drift off course. I worked a quiet job, accounting. Not glamorous, but solid. Numbers made sense to me. They didn't lie. They didn't play favorites. At my little desk in a small downtown office, I found peace in the rhythm of order. Debit, credit, balance. But in my family, balance never existed. Marjorie had seen to that. She was my father's older sister, the self-appointed matriarch ever since my grandmother passed. Where others had warmth, she had calculation. Where others gave, she took. She had a way of pulling people into her orbit with compliments one moment and sharp criticism the next, keeping them spinning around her like planets with no escape. And they adored her for it. Or maybe feared her. Holidays always told the story. I would show up early, arms full of carefully wrapped gifts I'd budgeted for weeks in advance. Marjorie would sweep in late, draped in furs, tossing expensive jewelry at her favorite nieces and nephews. Her gifts weren't thoughtful. They were weapons. Status symbols meant to remind everyone of who had the power to give and who merely received. I knew where I stood. Even as a child, I'd save my allowance in a small ceramic piggy bank shaped like a smiling blue elephant. I'd count the coins by flashlight, stacking nickels like little towers. That elephant sat on my dresser for years, a silent witness to the truth. I had to work for every ounce of stability I had. Marjorie never worked for anything. She expected it. The first sting came not long before that dinner with the $2,200 bill. A summer afternoon, sun blazing against the windows of my father's old house. We were supposed to be sorting through family photographs for an album project, something to preserve memories after my dad's passing. I had spent hours carefully organizing photos, birthdays, graduations, vacations, each one a fragile square of time. But Marjorie? She walked in, plucked the album from my hands and announced, "We'll only keep the pictures that flatter us." With a snap, she tore out the ones she didn't like. My father's crooked grin at a barbecue. My mother in her favorite but slightly faded yellow dress. Me at 12 with braces and messy hair. Ripped. Discarded. The others laughed nervously, like it was a joke. But to me, it wasn't. Those photos weren't just images. They were proof that our family had been real, imperfect, alive. And now pieces of it were gone, shredded because they didn't fit her narrative. I said nothing that day, but I felt something shift inside me. A quiet recognition that one day this would not stop with photo albums. One day it would be something bigger. And I was right. Because not long after that came the dinner. The long mahogany table, the champagne glasses, the bill with my name on it, and the smug smile of Marjorie, believing she'd finally put me in my place. After the dinner incident, things didn't quiet down. They never did with Marjorie. If anything, her appetite for control only sharpened. It started with whispers, family group chats that I was mysteriously left out of, vacations planned without me, though my cousins let details slip afterward, sun-drenched beaches, cruises, laughter, always hosted, always paid for by Marjorie, always with a little reminder slipped into conversation. You know, she really takes care of us. It was never true. She didn't take care of anyone. She bought loyalty, and when she couldn't buy it, she poisoned it. I noticed how people began looking at me differently. My cousin Daniel once asked if my job even paid enough to contribute to family events. Another time, my aunt whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "Well, some people just aren't team players." These weren't accidents. These were seeds. Seeds Marjorie had been planting for years. And they were growing. I tried to shrug it off, to focus on my life outside the family. But even there, her shadow stretched. One evening, after a 14-hour day at work during tax season, I sat at my kitchen table, invoices spread out like battle plans. My hands trembled as I typed. My eyes blurred from exhaustion. Sleep never came easily anymore. At night, I'd hear Marjorie's voice in my head. "You're the responsible one. You'll handle it." My chest would tighten. My jaw locked so hard it ached. I'd wake with my sheets damp, sweat sticking to my back like glue. And yet, every time a family gathering came up, I went. I told myself I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me quit. But with each visit, I came home drained, my spirit chipped away a little more. The lowest moment came on a rainy Sunday. We were at a family meeting about selling my late father's house. I had spent weeks organizing documents, researching property values, even speaking with real estate agents. I walked in ready to present everything fairly. But Marjorie had already been there. She slid glossy brochures across the table, promising to handle the process personally through her trusted contacts. The others nodded, relieved not to think about the details. She didn't even look at me when she said, "It's best if people who understand business take charge." I felt heat rising, words on my tongue like fire, but no one turned my way. My careful binders sat unopened beside me, invisible. In that moment, I felt completely alone, until a soft hand tapped my arm. It was Lily, my younger cousin, the quiet one. She leaned close and whispered, "I saw the work you did. Don't stop. She doesn't get to erase you." The words hit harder than I expected, not because they were loud, but because they weren't. They were a spark in the dark, proof that not everyone was blind. For the first time in months, my chest loosened. I inhaled fully. That was the moment I realized something Marjorie never wanted me to believe. I wasn't alone. Next up, batch 4. Midpoint twist, 600 to 800 words, where Marjorie escalates into using real authority, money, police, legal threats, family meetings. The hero looks cornered, but reveals the first hidden advantage. Do you want me to make Marjorie's next move financial, like threatening to cut you off from inheritance? Legal, false accusations, paperwork, or deeply personal, attacking your reputation? You said. Marjorie never played small for long. The whispers, the snide comments, the stolen spotlight, those were warm-ups. The real performance came weeks later, in the form of a thick white envelope slipped under my door. Inside was a letter, printed on her lawyer's stationery. Notice of intent to transfer property. She was trying to push through the sale of my father's house without my signature, without my consent. The words swam on the page. My hands shook as I read them over and over. I knew what it meant. She was weaponizing the law now. Not just family politics, not just humiliation at dinners. She was coming for the one thing that still tethered me to my parents' memory. I drove to the house that evening, the storm clouds bruising the sky. The old oak trees groaned in the wind as I unlocked the front door. The air smelled faintly of cedar and dust. My father's armchair still faced the fireplace. My mother's yellow dress still hung in the closet. This house wasn't just property, it was history. It was proof we had lived, and she wanted it erased. At the next family meeting, Marjorie arrived armed for battle. She wore a sharp crimson suit, gold bangles clinking against her wrist as she set down a leather folder. Her voice was silk over steel. The house is sitting empty. It's irresponsible to let it rot. We should transfer it into my name for efficiency. I'll take care of everything. Eyes turned to me, expectant, doubtful. I swallowed, every instinct screaming that I was outnumbered. Marjorie leaned back, confident, sure of her victory. But what she didn't know, what no one in the room knew, was that I had spent those sleepless nights preparing. From the moment I saw that letter, I'd been digging, into laws, into old files, into the one place Marjorie never thought I'd look, my father's locked desk drawer. There, beneath stacks of tax returns and faded letters, I had found a single folded paper. A deed. Not just to the house, but a deed updated in the last year of my father's life. One that listed me, and only me, as the legal owner. I remembered the weight of it in my hands, the smell of old ink, the trembling relief in my chest as I realized Marjorie couldn't touch it. So when she looked at me that night, expecting silence, I finally met her gaze. Actually, I said, sliding a photocopy of the deed across the table, the house is mine. Legally, permanently, you have no claim. The room fell silent. For the first time, Marjorie's mask cracked. Just a flicker, the tightening of her jaw, the slight widening of her eyes. But it was there. She had underestimated me. I should have stopped there. I should have let the victory breathe. But I knew her too well. Because in that same moment, I also knew something else. Marjorie wouldn't stop. She would double down. She always did. And as her smile slowly reassembled itself, sharper than before, I realized this wasn't over. It was only the beginning. Next, batch 5. Escalation of war. 600 to 800 words. Marjorie retaliates. Rumors, false reports, pulling more relatives into her corner. Meanwhile, you shift from being defensive to becoming strategic, using allies and documentation to build your case. Do you want me to make her retaliation more social? Smear campaigns, rumors, or official? False reports, forged claims, HOA neighborhood tricks for this next stage? The night I revealed the deed should have ended things. It should have been the final nail in Marjorie's plan. But villains don't surrender when exposed. They double down. And Marjorie? She was no exception. The first signs came in whispers again, but sharper this time. I'd run into cousins at the grocery store, their eyes darting nervously before repeating lines I knew weren't their own. She said you forged the deed. She said you tricked your father when he wasn't well. She said, you've always been greedy. Every rumor was a blade, carefully aimed. And behind each one, I heard her voice. Marjorie wasn't just fighting me now. She was trying to erase me. It spread quickly. Friends of the family stopped calling. Neighbors glanced at me with suspicion. Even at work, a colleague asked if everything at home was legal and above board. She was painting me as a thief. At night, sleep abandoned me completely. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding against my ribs like it wanted out. My sheets tangled around me, damp with sweat. My body lived in constant fight or flight. But instead of breaking, something hardened. I started documenting everything. Every email, every text, every sly remark whispered just loud enough for me to hear. I built folders, color-coded, dated, cross-referenced. Numbers were my language, and now I spoke them with precision sharper than any of her lies. The blue elephant piggy bank from my childhood still sat on my shelf, its paint chipped, but eyes bright. I began slipping dollar bills into it again. Not coins, but bills. Each one was a quiet vow. I'm not powerless. I'm preparing. And I wasn't alone anymore. Lily became more than just a supportive whisper. She began sending me screenshots, conversations with cousins where Marjorie tried to pit them against me. With each one, my evidence grew. My case grew. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting. I was strategizing. Marjorie must have sensed the shift because her attacks grew bolder. She spread word that I was mentally unstable, that the stress had broken me. She told neighbors I was hoarding junk in the old house, letting it rot into a health hazard. An HOA letter soon followed, accusing me of neglect. I knew her fingerprints were all over it. But instead of lashing out, I stayed silent. I filed the letter neatly in my folder. Another piece of evidence, another card to play later. The family gatherings grew unbearable. At one dinner, Marjorie raised her glass and, with false sweetness, said, "Some of us put family first. Others only think of themselves." Eyes shifted toward me. The air tightened. I said nothing. I didn't need to. Because in my bag that night, tucked between a notebook and a pen, was the growing file of proof, documents, screenshots, letters. A weight that no longer felt like burden, but like armor. And as I drove home through the dark streets, I felt it in my bones. The day of reckoning was coming, and no one, least of all Marjorie, could stop it. The summons came as casually as always. Family meeting at Marjorie's. Be on time. But this one felt different. The wording was sharp, almost smug. I knew she was planning something. When I arrived, the house glowed with artificial warmth, chandeliers blazing, perfume heavy in the air. The long dining table was lined with my aunts, uncles, and cousins. Crystal glasses sparkled, papers stacked neatly at Marjorie's end. She stood as I entered, her crimson suit gleaming like armor. A smile curved her lips, but her eyes were knives. "Tonight," she announced, "we settle the matter of the house. It's time for responsibility to prevail. I've spoken with legal advisors, and they agree. Transferring ownership to me is what's best for the family." Murmurs rose. Nods followed. Her web was tight, threads woven through every relative present. She thought I would fold. I stayed silent until she slid a new folder across the table, her rings clinking against the polished wood. "Here's the paperwork. All I need is your signature." Every eye turned to me. For a moment, the room was a vacuum. My heart thundered in my chest. The urge to crumble, to disappear, nearly swallowed me whole. Then I reached into my bag. I placed a thick folder on the table, mine. Neatly organized, tabbed, color-coded. Years of patience, sleepless nights, quiet suffering distilled into evidence. "This," I said calmly, "is every letter, every message, every false claim you've made about me. HOA complaints, rumors, forged timelines, each documented, verified, and prepared for court if necessary." The room froze. Marjorie's smile faltered. Her hand twitched against the folder in front of her. I slid out the copy of the deed, laying it on top like the crown jewel. "And this proves beyond doubt that the house belongs to me. Not you, not anyone else. Me." Silence pressed down like a weight. Even the chandelier lights seemed to dim. I watched her hands tremble as she reached for her glass of wine. The glass clinked against her teeth before she set it down too quickly, crimson liquid splashing over the rim. Around the table, eyes shifted. Doubt rippled through her loyal orbit. Cousins glanced at one another, whispers starting to turn. For the first time, Marjorie looked small. I leaned forward, voice steady. "You've spent years trying to erase me, to make me invisible. But I'm not invisible anymore, and I won't be erased." Her lips parted, but no words came. Just a faint, desperate shake of her head. "I don't want apologies," I said, my voice carrying through the room. "I want change." The silence that followed was absolute. It wasn't just a victory, it was a reclamation. Marjorie's downfall didn't come with one single strike. It came like glass shattering, sudden, loud, and impossible to piece back together. After that meeting, the silence of the room clung to her like smoke. She tried to laugh it off, tossing her hair, muttering something about misunderstandings. But the damage was done. Her empire of whispers collapsed the moment the truth sat in front of everyone in black and white. Cousins who once parroted her lies now avoided her gaze. Aunts who used to nod along with her every word shuffled uncomfortably in their seats. Even Daniel, who had mocked my job before, muttered, "Well, maybe we were too quick to judge." And Marjorie, my ever-smirking aunt, the self-proclaimed matriarch, was left with nothing but her trembling hands and a stain of wine blooming across her crimson sleeve. In the days that followed, the ripple spread, calls slowed, invitations stopped. Her hold on the family fractured. Where once she was the center of gravity, suddenly she was just orbiting alone. It wasn't revenge, it wasn't cruelty, it was consequence. For me, the change came quietly at first. I went back to the house, my house, and stood in the living room where my father's chair still faced the fireplace. The light fell soft through the curtains, dust swirling like golden threads. For the first time in years, I didn't feel dread there. I felt peace. I framed the deed, hung it in the hallway. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. I had stood my ground, and I had survived. The little blue elephant piggy bank remained on my shelf, its paint chipped, trunk faded. But now it was full again. Not with coins, but with crisp $2 bills I'd been tucking inside one by one. Each bill a quiet promise. I will keep building. I will keep protecting. I will keep living. Family gatherings changed too. They were smaller, simpler. Lily sat beside me more often, her quiet loyalty now shining openly. There was laughter again. Real laughter. Not the brittle kind Marjorie used to orchestrate with expensive gifts and cutting remarks. Marjorie still appeared sometimes, always late, always overdressed. But the room no longer bent around her. Conversations didn't stop when she entered. No one rushed to praise her jewelry or her vacations. She had lost the stage. Her downfall wasn't loud anymore. It was quiet, lingering. A slow fading of power until she was just another voice at the table. And me? I was no longer the shadow, no longer the invisible one. I had boundaries. I had proof. I had a voice. As I stood on the porch one evening, the sun setting behind the oak trees, I thought of that night at the restaurant. The $2,200 bill, the humiliation, the smug smile she wore when she thought she had broken me. And I smiled, not in triumph, but in freedom, because she hadn't broken me. She had forged me. And this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Have you ever faced favoritism, betrayal, or someone who abused their power just because they could? Have you ever felt invisible while someone else took the spotlight that should never have been theirs? I know how heavy that silence can feel, but I also know this. Silence doesn't last forever. So tell me, how did you rise above it? Or maybe, how are you still fighting? Share your story in the comments. You never know who might need your words the way I once needed mine. Because worth isn't something they give you. It's something you claim for yourself. And once you do, no one can take it away.